Well, hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily. We are back again. Justice for Batman. Fuck you, Matt Reeves. Whatever is wrong with you and your script, you need to figure that out and figure it out fast because we're going to be talking about it today. We're going to be talking about a lot of other things. We have to talk about Metamorpho. We have to look into some cool Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow artwork that Tom King shared. And then, speaking of Supergirl, we're going to talk about the DC timeline. Not just the DCU, but also some of the Elseworlds projects. It's mostly DCU, but like there's a couple other things. Like the Batman Part 2 that will never happen, but potentially will happen. It has a release date. It'll probably get pushed back again. But until that happens, we will talk about where it is, slated for release right now. Hands. Oh, so cool. It's groovy. All right, well, let's see. We've got today Lizz and John. How are you guys doing today? I'll start with you, Lizz. How was your day?
My day was lovely, thank you. And never say never about Batman Part 2. It'll happen. It's just not happening when we want it to happen. That's all.
Yeah, you don't got to be so mean to Matt Reeves. He didn't do anything. He's just a slow writer. God
It's
Right,
damn.
he literally
The
didn't do
poor man's
anything.
probably getting inundated with death threats at this
He
point. Don't
is.
fucking add to it,
Yeah.
Dan. Don't be like, fucking like poor Ahmad Best or anything like that.
Don't be like the
Oof.
Zack Snyder cultist, dude.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just really the
Be
fact that I
better.
am
Be
the fact that
Superman.
okay, whatever.
Yeah, do better,
Look, I
Dan.
just think that the fact that I am whatever. I'm the reason why I'm so like agitated about it just goes to show you how much I like the first movie. There's because if I didn't care for it, if I didn't give two shits,
Hey,
I'd be
I
like, well,
feel you.
whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's I think to me it's justified the anger and the frustration. More so just the frustration of it.
Oh,
I'm
the
not like
anger. It
I'm
turns good men cruel.
cruel. Yeah, that's how it starts.
Well,
The fear,
just don't turn out like Harvey Dent. Harvey Dent's a dick. Anyway.
the fear, the sense of hopelessness that turns good men. I can't even do the accent, but Jeremy Irons, man, one of the
Yeah,
goats.
I mean, it's Jeremy
Um,
Irons,
it is Jeremy Irons, Scar, when Scar was still a cool character.
Yeah,
Um,
before they ruined him because he fucking, he turned evil for pussy. Like who wants that?
Happens all the time. Tale as
Yeah.
old as time, really. Tale
Yeah.
as
I
old
mean,
as
they
And
are
we're
big
not
old.
just talking about Beauty and the Beast.
I mean, they are big old cats. So like, what else? What else do you expect?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Anyway,
Um, you know,
Metamorpho,
the
guys.
hot Sahara sun. But anyway, Metamorpho introduced. so Anthony Carrigan is playing Metamorpho in Superman, and I just found this post from I think it's from IGN, but they were posting about an article in Screen Rant. So I'm just gonna read this quick because I think it is worth a quick discussion before we get into the other news of the day. Um, Superman narratives are usually all about hope, idealism, and just humanity's potential. We've been talking about it all week. We talked about it a couple of days ago. But then Metamorpho, on the other hand, who he's not really been talked about as much when we talk about the Superman trailer because he was really in that one little shot, and most people don't know who Metamorpho is, even though we heard the news when Anthony Carrigan got cast in the role, and we've all seen the image, that you see here on the page. With Metamorpho and what he looks like in the movie. We have seen some of the comic book artwork. If you've been watching the show long enough, we discussed that when the movie was being made. But Metamorpho's story, as opposed to Superman, which is, like I said, about hope, idealism, humanity's potential, Metamorpho's
Right.
story explores much more so themes of loss, alienation, and then it's just a struggle to find one's place in the world, which you could say in some ways is what Man of Steel made it seem like that too, that Superman was trying to, find his place in the world. But I mean, at least in this version of Superman, it looks like, Clark Kent kind of knows who he is a lot more so and where he belongs. And yes, maybe he will have some identity struggles, but that's much more of a thing with Metamorpho because of the character's history. So
Yes.
for those of us who are not so aware of who Metamorpho is and then where he comes from, what his origin story, because there's no guarantee we're gonna get an origin story in the DCU.
Yeah.
John, I wanted to start with you, just kind of giving us a brief background on Metamorpho, and then let's do a comparison with, again, just kind of being able to see just two very different sets of characters, and how, again, Superman is this ideal almost, and then Metamorpho is a much darker, like, opposite. It's like the dark side of it all, where he's also got powers, but the way he got them and the way he's controlled by his masters is a much darker
Mhm.
tone to it than what Superman embodies.
Yeah. So, there was there's a whole, but I'm not gonna get into the entirety of, Metamorpho. because he's a bit of a, I don't want to say complicated, but he is kind of like a corporate hero in a way, which kind of fits with, I feel, which definitely fits with what James Gunn is going for with the heroes in this world. How it's, there seems to be sort of like an anti-corporation narrative. Hopefully it's done better than, modern boys seasons, but it's so Metamorpho is essentially, he was well, Rex Mason was hired by Stag Industries to collect this like artifact or something, and he, eventually, you know, it was like a plot like by Stag to like kill him or something because he was about to marry his daughter and all this, and then he eventually gets powers, and he's like, so he was sort of like envisioned as sort of like a parody of like the zany sci-fi heroes of like the 60s. That's why he kind of looks so weird. Um but it's sort of like he's kind of like a bit of a meathead character, with a bit of like a dark humor edge to it. He he just kind of he kind of gives off that vibe a little bit, and it's overall he's very interesting character because he kind of has like the struggles that a lot of like kind of uh beyond human comprehension characters have. Cyborg is a big one where it's like the loss of humanity kind of
Hmm.
thing. Cyborg is with the technology side, with Rex Mason, it's the nature side,
Right.
it's like the cosmic mystical side of things. So, it
I mean,
was like it was like a whole thing, and
in the
uh
context of this movie specifically, we have seen that we're gonna have Stag Industries, we're gonna have or Luther Corp,
Luther Corp,
and
Lord
even Lord
Industries.
Industries. Who controls Metamorpho in this world? Do you think?
It's definitely going to be Stag. So I definitely feel like if I were to take a guess, if like in terms of theorizing, in regards to how Metamorpho is going to factor into everything, I think if I were to take a guess, since remember, if you remember from the set photos way back when, we saw Mr. Terrific, we saw Hawkgirl, and we saw Guy Gardner. We didn't see Metamorpho on set. We didn't see Anthony Kerrigan
No,
on
we didn't.
set.
We never saw him on set. Yeah.
So I'm willing to bet that Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl are Maxwell Lord's team, and that's kind of like their corporate thing of like the Justice League International, or you know or like a proto Terrifics, or even though Terrifics is a Stag thing, whatever the team is called, it's the three of them, and then Metamorpho seems like he's going to be Stag's like superhero that they use. So it's very much, and then maybe they'll eventually join sides, and maybe maybe Mr. Terrific joins Stag, and then Guy Gardner and Hot Girl stay with Lord. They create the Justice League, and then it's like and Justice League becomes their own thing, and whatever it is. So that's like kind of my, because I was thinking about it recently. I'm like, yeah, I was like, oh, it's going to be the four of them, because it's like kind of like a Terrifics thing where it's like Miss Terrific and Metamorpho are part of the Terrifics in the comics, which was kind of the way later parallel to the Fantastic Four from DC, even though DC did originally have a Fantastic Four called Challengers of the Unknown, which was
Right.
made by Jack Kirby before Fantastic Four came out. But so like that's what I thought it was going to be, but with Hawkgirl and Guy Gardner. But I didn't, and then, but we haven't seen Metamorpho except for that one shot where he's alone in some cave. It looked like,
Yeah.
and but we constantly see the three of them together. So I'm like,
Hmm.
now it seems like, now I'm thinking, and maybe you guys will agree, is that Metamorpho is just going to be Stag's guy, which is the comics. That's from the comics.
Right.
And then the three of them, it's just going to be a tri team, and that's going to be Maxwell Lord's like team of heroes. So that's like kind of the vibe I'm getting. So I feel like it's going to be like a battle, and then we're bringing in like Luther Corp, which he has the engineer, and Ultraman, who is, many people are saying, is a Superman clone. So That's what I think. I think it's gonna be like a battle of like hero, like corporation esque heroes, and
Mm-hmm.
Superman is gonna be the lone wolf of a guy who's just trying to do the right thing, while all these other heroes have become corporate or were made by corporations, which is definitely an interesting way to take it and totally not out there. I just hope it doesn't get too like politicized and socialized and all that stuff, because we don't want to go too like into that vibe, because then I think you'll alienate people. But I think that's definitely an interesting way to take it, and I think Metamorpho is definitely an interesting character, because I think they definitely, have it's all four of these characters. Well, mainly, well, not as much as Mr. Terrific, but I think all four of these characters has like that sort of like human tragic element that Superman is going to be going through throughout most of the movie. Like you have Guy Gardner, who is like has this like powerful ring, but he's like maybe seen as the butt of the joke and he's not taken seriously. Maybe like Hal and, well, maybe not John, but Hal doesn't like treat him seriously. That's why he's like, "Fuck you, just stay on Earth. I don't give a shit about you," type of thing. So he's like, "Okay, I'll do this to
Yeah.
prove myself. I'll do
Right.
this," and he has that horrendous bowl cut and all that. So he's kind of going through that. Like he's like trying to be like a better hero. He's trying to be, but he's like kind of this meathead dickbag kind of character. Hawk Girl is like, you know, a she kind of brings in the reincarnation thing. I don't know. Kendra Saunders is kind of, I'm not as familiar with Kendra Saunders. I'm more so familiar with the Thanagarian version and the original like Egyptian like version.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kendra Saunders is part of the Egyptian version. I don't totally remember, and I apologize if I'm getting the information wrong, but all these characters are dealing with a lot of sides of like tragedy and like trying to deal with themselves while also dealing with like themselves in this world. So there's a lot of like two sides to every story with a lot of these characters. Metamorpho is a big one. He's probably the biggest one out of all of them. But I think all of them are going to go through their own issues. Obviously, not as much as Superman because he's the main character, but you're going to have like this like tragic side, this corporate side, this, you know, who am I? What is this world? Am I fitting in this world type of thing? And I really like that overall vibe of what James Gunn is doing with all these different kind of characters, how they all kind of have that same through line, but still very different at their cores and what they stand for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's also when you look at the character, it's he couldn't look more different than Superman,
Right.
and his origin story is a lot darker. I just appreciate the idea that I think when I saw that post on, like I said, it's I think this is from, yeah, Screen Rant. So just talking about how it opens up the possibilities for just different kind of narratives, something a bit darker, and then again, if the character does well enough, you can spin him off into his own TV series, into his own movie, even like a quick, one-off, if they want to do those, like Marvel has done. I mean, Liz, based on what you just heard John kind of describe about Metamorpho as a character, do you feel like you would want to see more of him beyond the movie, or are you just like, let's see how it goes? Maybe I won't even care about this character at all, or do you? And
Well,
do
I
you
mean,
even see a juxtaposition with Superman?
I'm all for introducing the masses to new characters. I think that's great. I just hope, again, we've talked a little bit about how many characters are being introduced into this film. So I hope they all get an equal shot to shine and to be showcased. I really hope that it's not like, I mean, who knows? Like, could he be somebody that he interacts with Superman for like all of 5 minutes, or does he play an integral role in the film? I'm interested to see those kinds of things. But again, I hope that all of these characters, like I said, get an equal amount of time. Rather than just be like some one off, like, oh, just hey, good to see us, just passing
Yeah,
through. Because I do want to know more, and I would like to see more from them.
right.
And I think it helps, give you an understanding of this world that
Yeah,
Superman's walking around with. Because again, we're not getting an origin story. We're not going back to the beginning. He's
Right.
already a well-established character at this point. He's a well-known guy. So it would be nice if all of those other additional characters can get the same treatment.
right. And I like the idea of, again, this is a James Gunn's way of doing more world building. He's creating
Right.
a world where all these, superpowered characters exist, and he has said that all of these characters will get their, moment to shine in the movie.
Yeah.
It's just that Mr. Terrific is probably, the most, like, he's a leader in terms of like of the pack, in terms of the other superpowered
Mhm.
metahumans in the movie. He's going to have the biggest role as a supporting character, but a lot of these other characters will have a role to play of some kind. And I'm interested in seeing again how Metamorpho fits into the picture, like you described, John. It's a world where superheroes work for corporations, and then Superman is hopefully going to remind them that hey, you don't have to do that, and that if you have the powers and you have the
Be cool
ability
like me,
to
because
save
I'm
people,
Superman.
yeah, or to help people, like you should maybe you do it for the right reasons, not for the
Do it
money,
for the
but
vine. Anyway,
exactly.
remember that? I'm old.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You are old. Stop showing your age. Uh, you have been exposed. But anyway, Liz, while we were talking about this, passed along a note, and I think this is worth discussing because we are in the year of Superman, 2025. We're just about getting into the summer of Superman in a couple of months' time. So, speaking of which, do you guys remember there was that J.J. Abrams Superman movie that was in the works
Unfortunately.
a long time ago? And Ta-Nehisi Coates was writing the script. It was gonna be, a black Superman, if you want to, and we weren't really sure if they were gonna do like Clark Kent, except that he was black, or if were gonna go with a different. There's been other versions of the characters. There's like I think is what Val Zod is one of them.
Val
So
Zod and Calvin Ellis are two
Calvin
different
Ellis. So there
characters.
are other iterations. Now recently in a Variety report, it says here on the screen, and thank you again, Liz, for bringing this to us because I did not know this was even an update that happened. But there has been very little updates on this in general. But
Yeah.
according to a recent report in Variety, as you can see here from Comic Book CBR, where they're talking about it, quote unquote, technically still alive. They're talking about the Project Superman, which I don't even know what to call it beyond Superman. I don't want to say Black Superman because I don't know if that's the way they wanted it to
No.
be known. But the Superman, the J.J. Abrams and Ta-Nehisi Coates Superman movie, it's technically still alive, but basically there has been no forward movement on it since early 2023. Now, James Gunn also earlier in 2024, we mentioned this only like I think a couple of weeks ago that James Gunn, the last we checked in January of 2024,
Yeah.
basically a year ago now, said that it's not canceled. But now that a year has passed, we haven't really had any updates. And now that you see this report
Mm-hmm.
from Variety saying that look, it's still alive, it's still breathing,
It's
but
still
there's no
here. We
movement
swear.
since early. I mean, early 2023 was 2 years ago now, right? And then even James Gunn last talking about it a year ago. I mean, there's so many other things going on, and now that we have this really big Superman movie coming out, which is meant to reestablish the character in the in the public eye and the cultural zeitgeist. Do you think this thing is just gonna get shelved? Is this just gonna? It's just is it in development hell? I mean, Liz, what do you think? Do you think this project will ever move forward? Is there still any momentum behind it, or is it just gonna die a slow death over time?
I mean, the fact that it's still being talked about gives me the feeling that it's gonna happen. Again, who knows when or how soon? But I mean, at certain points, they were already talking about casting. They were talking about potentially Michael B. Jordan being their Superman. So the fact that they've gone that far to talk about actors, to get a storyline written, and they mentioned, I
Right.
apologize, I don't have it right in front of me, but they did mention, what the storyline would probably be, what timeline that would follow. So they've kind of, put it together and built it up. So I don't see why not. They've put so much thought behind it. But and who knows, it could be a situation where they make the film, and it could be, like a Catwoman situation, and they just, or Batgirl situation, they just scrap it. But I think the fact that it's being brought up again is kind of promising.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, it just feels like I don't share the same optimism as you because
That's fair.
2 years with no updates, and James Gunn hasn't mentioned anything about it for over a year. I'm sure people have been asking him, every so often. Or if they
Yeah.
haven't, then maybe that goes to show you how little people, seem to remember this thing even existed.
But again,
But
we know,
it's
we know of a lot of projects that have been in development for a really long time, and you hear nothing about it until it comes out, and then come
yeah,
to find out, oh, this has been in the works for 10 years. For we talked about it 15 years ago, but sometimes other things just need to come first. So it's a possibility. I mean, and again, it's not. to me, the timeline's not a factor because this isn't like a sequel to anything.
Right.
This isn't a continuation of a story
It's
that
his
we've
own
already
thing.
had.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't
Mhm.
anything that we had to like wait on. It's completely unknown. It's completely
Right.
new. So I don't think that has much to do so much with it, whether it gets developed or not. But the
Yeah.
fact that they're talking about it, and that, like I said, that they've built it up so much at this point, I think it's gonna happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, also the question on the screen here from the article in CBR is that is there only enough room for just one Superman in town? Uh, there were reports that Superman and Lois potentially got canceled because of the Superman movie coming out this year. I don't believe that's the case. I mean,
That
James Gunn
was
kind of
not the case at
clarified
all.
that. So it had more to do with the fact that the ownership at the CW changed, so that's the reason why their new vision doesn't really include a lot of DC programming. They're targeting a different demographic than what the CW used to be about, and it's not owned by Warner Brothers and Paramount anymore. They're much more minority owners, so they don't really have a say in the programming of the network anymore. So with that said, though, I do appreciate the idea that if you are introducing a new Superman in this brand new DCU, that you then try to create as much space as you possibly can between that version of Superman, what you would like to be the definitive version potentially, hence the name just Superman instead of Superman Legacy, and then not kind of bring in another version of Superman right away. Like, obviously with the Batman, we've already had established the Batman in 2022. So the sequel to Batman 2, people are like, oh, it's the Robert Pattinson Batman. They're not necessarily going to confuse it with the DCU Batman Brave and the Bold. And another reason why they're doing, Damian Wayne coming into that movie, they're giving you a version of the Batman and the DCU that is going to be so different from the version of the Batman with Robert Pattinson that for two people to confuse one movie with the other would be like it's just they're trying to create that distinction. Now even if this Superman movie looks that different from the Superman we're getting this year, I still think it would be a mistake personally if they decided that, oh yes, 2025 there's a new Superman movie with David Cornsweet, and then in 2026 we get a different Superman movie written by Ta-Nehisi Coates and produced by J.J. Abrams. I think the idea of if it is indeed their goal that they have had no updates on this, no movements, I don't even know if Ta-Nehisi Coates is still attached, but if they want to spread this out so that maybe this movie comes out, I don't know, 2027, 2028 or something, to me that works out. I mean, I'm okay with that personally. I'm not in a rush to go see this movie, even though the premise had some merit to it, and wouldn't mind seeing it. I want to see what they do with it. Ta-Nehisi Coates has written a few good movies himself. I mean, John, what do you think about this? Do you think this thing is ever gonna make it to our screens, or is this thing just gonna die a slow death in the development hell, or just
The
the halls of Warner Brothers, as it were?
the only way I would have seen this happening was when it was announced, when it was
Yeah,
like
when like
WB was
Henry Cavill
essentially
was not coming
done with
back.
Henry
Yeah.
Cavill. It was like the DCU was just like they were just kind of throwing shit at the wall.
Hmm.
This was at a time when the DCU just didn't know what in the flying fuck they were doing. It was the revolving
Yeah.
door of CEOs at the time. AT&T didn't know what they were doing. None of these fuckers knew what they were doing. So it was like, all right, the Black Superman, sure, that's fine. And so, and I know Michael B. Jordan was interested. I think he
But
had
he
a
was more a
different idea.
producer. And it was, yes, like you said, it wasn't the same movie. I think he
It
wanted
wasn't
to
the
do
same
an
movie. He had like a
yeah,
mini series as Val
yeah,
Zod in mind. I think
right.
that's what he had. But yeah, I just don't see this happening now that we have like confirmed Superman is coming out. It's just gonna. I wouldn't say it would confuse audiences because we are supposedly be getting two Batman that were this that are both Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't like be totally you know out of range to see this, but like I can't see this happening now that we have like an actual confirmed Superman that's going to be appearing in multiple like movies and shows, and he's going to be appearing a lot. I feel like that doesn't make a ton of sense to have another Superman running about. But then I bring back to the Batman argument where it's like, well, we're going to have two Batman running around if like
Right.
Batman Part 2 ever fucking comes out. But that's like the plan is to have two Batman running around. So like
Right.
maybe it's not totally out there. I have heard that his comics are pretty good. I haven't read them, so I can't judge. I've heard some said have said that they're good. Some have said that they're bad. It's been mixed, and J.J. Abrams wrote that god awful Superman flyby, Superman Asylum, whatever the fuck it was supposed to be called, back in the early 2000s with Kryptonian kung fu and all that shit. Great concept art, I will say that had really great concept art. But like, I've read bits of that script and it is fucking bad. It was a terrible script. So we should be thankful that that movie never happened. So it just like I can't. It's just J.J. Abrams. I feel like it's just a name that's just been dwindling after what he did with Star Trek and what he's doing now with Batman Cape Crusader and all this other shit. It's just like I just and especially after Star Wars, like that Rise of Skywalker, I think might have killed his directing career because I don't think he's directing anything. I could be wrong. Maybe he is directing something. I don't know, but it just I can't see this being a winner. You have a director that nobody really likes anymore, a writer that nobody has ever heard of, who's never written anything Superman related. But hey, Anna Noguera has also never written anything, so there's also that. Um, and it's another Superman where it's just like it's not it feels like it's just do it because it'll get controversy. Like, because
I
you're going to
don't.
get all the people that are going to be mad. Oh, black Superman. Da, 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 da. You're going to get all those people. And then you have the people. I feel like they're not doing it to like tell a story that they want to tell. They're doing it because it'll have a lot of publicity attached. No matter what they do, they could do a black Clark Kent. They can do Calvin Ellis. They can do Val Zod, or they can do an entirely original character made for the film. I just feel like they're not doing this to like say anything or do anything meaningful. They're just doing it for like, oh, let's do it because it'll
I mean,
it'll get people angry or get people really like excited for the wrong reasons, kind of thing. I don't. I
To
just
me, I didn't necessarily look at it that way. I looked at it as like you said, Henry Cavill's future was bleak as far as being Superman at the time. This is before he got announced as coming back in Black Adam, and then he made the infamous post that I'm back, guys, and then I'm like, oh no, never mind, I'm not back. But
yeah.
James Gunn got hired. But this is before all of that happened. So then they were, like you said, they were trying to go in a different direction. They were like you said, a little bit from the executive side of things at the time that previous ownership, Warner Brothers, terms just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams, company at the time had an overall deal with Warner Brothers, which when David Zaslav stepped in, he was like, we're scrapping the shit out of that, and we're gonna like kill half the stuff that you got going on because A, it was too expensive, and then B, like they didn't really trust J.J.
I know
Abrams
there
as
was like
much.
a
Like
Justice League Dark
that
adaptation
that
that he
was like
wanted to
the
do.
original project J.J. Abrams was attached to with DC. But then also his Bad Robot was involved with the potential Constantine series on HBO Max, and that pretty much got scrapped. So, and given that we haven't had, as you can see in the Variety article, there's no movement on this in 2 years.
Yeah,
I just really doubt like
I don't
anything
think
is
this
gonna
is
come of this.
happening. I
Two
think
years, no
I think
update.
J.J. Abrams, he's like, you know what? I've tried to get
Yeah,
two Superman movies off the ground. Neither worked.
and
We're gonna get the Summer of Superman
yeah.
this year, and we're gonna be getting a lot of really good stuff in terms of DC, like a new leadership. I think James Gunn's just kind of being nice. It's like, oh, it's still, anyway, Superman, real Superman. So I don't know. It just
No,
if you
well,
have a good story to tell, then tell it. But it's just like
yeah.
I would say don't make a black Superman because that's all it's going to be known as,
No, I
unfortunately.
mean, look, but
Kind of
you
like
could do
Captain
it. Like
America
if,
4. That's
but
not
if,
Captain America Brave New World. It's Black Captain America, which is unfortunate. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm
mm,
just saying, like, make an icon movie. He's essentially Superman, but his own character. And that's what Dwayne
yeah.
McDuffie tried to do in the 90s. That was why Milestone Media happened, was because he's like, I don't see a lot of representation for black people. Let me make a whole shit ton of black
I mean,
characters that people
there's
can
a lot of
identify with,
milestone media characters that were meant
like
to be adapted
Static,
before.
Icon, Hardware, like a
Yeah,
lot of there,
yeah.
as well as tons of other characters that Static became one of like he got his own show, like he became one of the most popular retconned Timverse characters, and a lot of people grew up with that show. It said a lot without like spoon feeding the audience, and it was was such a great show
Yeah.
for its time. It's still a great show. I remember catching a couple episodes way back when, but it's just, if you want to, it's just like I feel like you're writing yourself into a corner by just getting sloppy seconds of another character than just doing your own character kind of thing. Like, and I know a lot of other people have said the same thing. It's just, if it happens, it happens. I'm sure, like, if it's like if tomorrow they announce, okay, cool, Ta-Nehisi Coates is still in, J.J. Abrams is still in, we're gonna get Michael B. Jordan as Val Zod, then boom, awesome, great. And if we don't, I don't think anybody's gonna cry over it. That's just all I'm saying in regards to that.
Yeah, look, ultimately, like to me, like whether it's Captain America 4 or this, it's based on a version of a comic. Like there's comic book stories clearly where there is a black Superman. There's two different versions of it, and even with Captain America, like Falcon does take over at some point in the comics,
Right.
even if that's not something that's the most popular iteration of the character. But so there's precedent to follow, and I get it. But like to me, just purely in the business sense, either the fact that this
Yeah,
thing is still
that's
alive, look, the J.J. Abrams deal, the previous deal got killed, but they did re-up the deal. That's the Variety article where this information comes from. So he's got a new deal with Warner Brothers, but it's not nearly as extensive as like the $500 million deal that Ann Sarnoff gave him. So under David
Mhm.
Zaslav's leadership, he's got a much smaller agreement, and it's not exclusive. It doesn't tie him down. It's just that Warner Brothers was like, okay, you can bring your projects to us. We will take a look at it, and maybe we will consider them. And if we pass on it, then you can happily go and shop it somewhere else. Now, with this movie, I think at the last time we heard a script update, Ta-Nehisi Coates had worked on multiple drafts. So I think the reason why this thing isn't completely canceled is probably because there is a finished script somewhere. At least, if not, it's completely finished, ready to film. It's far enough along that if they decided to go back to it, they could, even if as an Elseworld story. I just don't see it happening anytime soon. So, but I mean, thanks, Liz, for bringing it up because we have been wondering if we're gonna get an update on this anytime soon. And it just, I mean, this is one of those things which it was sort of like not the latest breaking news because the article is a few months old, and I think we talked about it and also curious when that happened. But at the same time, just the idea that we haven't seen any movement on this in 2 years, and the last time we heard from James Gunn
Yeah.
about it was a year ago. It just doesn't bode well for this project. But we'll see.
Mhm.
If anything happens, if it becomes active again, I'm sure we'll get into it and we'll talk about it. Right now, I wanted to kind of quickly point to John's favorite comic book writer, John's homeboy, Tom King, giving credit to some of the artwork, the brilliant artwork from his comic book, The Woman of Tomorrow. And quite frankly, I'll be honest with you, this looks beautiful.
Oh
It
yeah, it
looks
looks great.
it just looks like it has such a cosmic vibe. Like that's the best way I can describe it. And it bodes really well for if they're adapting, Woman of Tomorrow pretty closely into the movie that's coming out in 2026. I just really like what we're seeing here. Obviously, some of this is gonna have to like be adapted to fit alongside the aesthetic of Superman because Supergirl can't look so different from Superman that they don't even feel like they're from the same house, which they are from the House of L. So, but with that in mind, Supergirl is coming out in 2026, which is only a year and a half away. And if you haven't already caught up with it, then go out there and grab yourself the Woman of Tomorrow comic book. I've got one of mine, and it looks brilliant. If you look at this artwork, it just looks fantastic. It's got this really vibrant colors, but the detail is there. It feels mythological in some ways. I mean, the artwork is so different from the average comic book, but it just makes me more excited about Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, especially if this is, the material, the source material that they're working from. Now, with the source material in mind, we do have to talk about the DC timeline. The
Yeah.
DCU timeline, the Elseworlds projects. There's not many Elseworlds projects going on right now. We already talked about one, which seemingly on the shelf or maybe on the way to the shelf. But we do have to talk about what is coming our way, indeed. So
Yeah.
before we get into like all the numbers and the details of it all, I do want to share a quick graphic, which I believe this was created by Heroes Assembled, which is
Yep.
a great account. They put this together, a nice visual. It gives you the list of projects that we got in 2024 last year with Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, the Penguin, which is an Elseworld story from the Batman cinematic universe, or the Bex, the Batman epic
Hashtag
crime
Vic
saga.
deserved it.
Fuck you. Justice for Wick. Creature Commandos, also, which is still airing. Now we're literally just one episode away. The final episode coming out in next week with the series. Oh, no, the season finale, because it did get
Not
renewed.
series finale. No,
The
definitely
season
not.
finale. We will get into more of that in a bit too. But Harley Quinn got
Yeah,
delayed. January 25. It's
Superman.
coming
Superman
out
is
soon.
July 2025.
And
Very
then of course
exciting.
Superman, Peacemaker season 2. And then you have a couple of untitled spots. You have Supergirl in there, Clayface Lanterns. The Batman Part 2 will keep slipping down the list. Dynamic Duo. And then you have Waller, and you have a bunch of these names here. That now these are projects that we don't know yet when they're meant to come out, but we know they were announced. They're in development, so they're official. Now, with all of that in mind, John, you put together a really
I did.
a more detailed look in terms of like a year-by-year breakdown of what we're gonna get. So let's start off with
Like
the circa
via John's best research.
John's best
I
research.
appreciate that.
And we put a little asterisk.
So
there
if I
for safe
suck and
measure.
I'm wrong about everything, you could just throw me under the bus.
Throw you under the bus. I mean, but that's why I put an asterisk in there. It just gives you a little margin for error. So, like the Thunderbolts, just a little margin for error.
Okay.
Yeah. So, circa 2024, 2025, Liz. This is basically I combined 2024, 2025 because the only thing we got on this list actually we sort of left Kite Man Hell Yeah off the list because that technically did come out in 2024. That's the first season that is. But we're looking at everything
that was kind
moving
of
forward.
pre-DC. It was kind of DC Studios. It kind of wasn't.
Studios,
so it was like,
yes,
I wasn't sure. So I was like, let me just have Creature Commandos part.
But the list starts out with Creature Commandos, and that's like on this list the first thing to come out, and it came out December 5th, 2024. We've been talking about it. We are one episode away now from the first series, the first season coming to an end. And
what do you think this is, Britain? We call them seasons here.
That's right.
Series. Get
We've
at
got
it.
a lot of British. Dude, Lenny will be on your ass about that.
She's not British.
So-
She's Scottish. So it's like, and they will be very finicky about that.
Huh? Okay. I don't think she's Scottish. She lives in London. But anyway. So
Lenny said she was Scottish. So like,
did she say she was Scottish?
She can be Scottish and live in London at the same time, you guys.
Exactly.
yeah, I know. Like
Fair
that's
enough.
I don't know what Dan's talking about. He's being weird. Anyway.
Am I being weird or you being weird? Anyway, let's stop arguing. Let's talk about the list, shall we? 2024, 2025. Creature Commandos is already out and up and running. It's actually almost done running with season 1. Superman, It's on the way in July. Peacemaker season 2, we know is coming out sometime in August of this year. We don't know the exact date. Batman the Caped Crusader season 2 is late 2025, so even less of a idea of when exactly that's going to come out. And then of course,
according to some sources, Liz did mention that it would be coming July 31st, 2025. So we don't, I don't know if that counts for late 2025, but I just wanted to.
That's from an interview before the first season came out.
Before the first season. So it's like, we don't know, but I just did want to mention that just in case. But yeah, and then Dean Lorey, the showrunner for both Kite Man and Creature Commandos, and I think Harley Quinn as well. He mentioned that it's getting a season 2, but I've tried, like, it was like off a comment. I tried to find the initial interview. I couldn't find it. So that's like kind of up in the air. Some people have said, oh, it's going to get a season 2. Some people haven't. So that's kind of the first iffy thing of like theorizing this list. This timeline which by the way was Lenny's idea. She wanted to know the official timeline of everything. So that's what we're doing.
That's fair.
But yeah, so Kite Man was it's iffy. It's iffy, but I think if it were to come out, it would be 2025, probably around the same time as Batman Caped Crusader.
Yeah,
like how it was in this year or last year.
I mean, the first season was well received. We just never got any news about whether the second season is in green lit or not. So, I mean, but Liz, like you look at this list, obviously you're watching Creature Commandos, but if Creature Commandos is anything to go by, coming from DC Studios now, all of these projects, how do you see the rest of the 4 on the list? What stands out to you the most?
Well, I mean, again, I'm most excited for Superman. It's killing me that we have to wait until July, especially since Creature Commandos is wrapping next week. It's like, what am I supposed to do between the projects? Like, there's other things I want to,
That's it. That's all you can do.
Yeah, pretty much. But no, I mean, I'm excited for all of it. I still, again, the majority of these characters are all brand new to me, so I'm looking forward to the education. Kite
Mhm.
Man, I've never heard of before in my life. I know nothing about it. Batman the Cape Crusader, I did not see season one, so
Don't
maybe I'll catch up on that in
don't
between.
Don't
Okay.
watch Kite Man instead. Watch Kite Man. It's
Okay.
it's so much better. It's kind of that. I will say. I mean, you can watch Cape Crusader. I mean, I personally didn't care for it, but maybe you'll like it. But Kite Man is kind of similar to that James Gunn esque humor, like Creature Commandos,
Okay.
except maybe slightly more juvenile. But still, me and Bridget really liked it. We reviewed the show together, and we
Okay.
were both like really into it. So maybe you'll like it because of that. But I
Okay,
found
well,
it was
yeah,
a
I have
fun
that time
show.
to catch up. That's good. Yeah. And again, I'm really looking forward to Peacemaker season 2. I loved season 1. So it's all good stuff. It's just I keep going
Do you
back and
really want
forth
to
about,
taste it?
oh goodness.
Do you
I keep
really, really, really,
going,
really, really want to taste it?
calm down, John. I keep going back and forth, I know I keep saying that I'm glad that they're spacing things out, that they're not overwhelming us with projects like Marvel has been doing the past couple of years. But then at the same time, like I said, I'm also getting really selfish, and when I see something that's
But
really good,
that's
I
good
want
because that
more of it.
means you're
Yeah.
excited and you want these things to come out. That's
Yeah, and
I'd
I
rather
do. Yeah.
that yeah, like exactly. I'd rather be like waiting with bated breath and anticipation for the next thing than it being a chore when I see the next release date for
Right.
another project, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So I it's pros and cons to both. So, you know, just cinema. Perfect. I know it's TV and not cinema, but still cinema. Anyway, it's a ridiculous show. It's so fun though.
Well, that's
Um,
cool. Yeah.
uh, but yeah, Kite Man, hell yeah, brilliant. But that's kind of what we have. Obviously, pretty much 4 out of 5 of these are confirmed. I mean, we literally just finished. We're finishing Creature Commandos. We're getting Superman. We're getting Peacemaker. We're probably getting Cape Crusader. Kite Man is still on the fence, but we're getting most of them, so that's pretty cool. Um, for 2025, but next year we still have like reasonably confirmed stuff, and then as time goes on, is my own theorizing in terms of what's next. But yeah, we're definitely in for an exciting year for 2025. Hell, we might even have a surprise project somewhere,
Wouldn't that be
maybe.
nice? Yeah.
But next we got so the first thing we have is Creature Commandos. Now you're probably wondering 2026 Creature Commandos. This is the first theorizing aspect of it because as you remember from the slate, we had an untitled DC project. It said DC project, it didn't say movie, it just said project. And that
Right.
was coming out in May of 2026. Now, I thought of out of all the projects that are officially greenlit or out of all the announced projects, I feel the one that made the most sense was Creature Commando Season 2. Because if we think about it, it was everything was announced in 2022. And I'm assume from that point they got, animation done and got all the voices and it was for all that. Now, I don't know totally know how the animation side of things work, but I'd be willing to bet that this thing got a season 2 before we knew it. I'd be willing to
Yeah,
bet that.
I would imagine that. Yeah.
From behind the scenes cuz
Sure.
they know behind the scenes stuff obviously way more than you know, uh you're Dan, you're fine.
Do
Um
better, Dan.
no, it's Dan's okay. He's tired. He's on monster. He's double fisting Monster on Red Bull. It's okay. Um but Creature Commandos, I'm willing to bet they've pretty much started on season 2 already, which is probably why we're
Oh,
going
for
to get a
sure.
slightly faster turnaround,
For
which is
sure.
why it's going to take place a little bit less than 2 years, but it's still a while. And I feel like that makes the most sense. That mm, now it's not confirmed. Again, we're just theorizing. It could be a totally different DC project. It could be like a new thing rather than previous thing. But out of everything we've gotten, because I was talking about this with Dan either earlier this week or last week how Creature Commandos is the only thing that makes sense that they've probably been working on it and going to be releasing that proper window. Because think about it, we're getting Supergirl in less than 2 weeks. We're going to be getting Lanterns in a month, and those are both going to come out in June of 2026, as it says right here. And Clayface is going to be coming out later that year too, and that's going to be starting filming in a couple months. So the thing that's going to be, if it is official that it's going to come out in May of 2026, would have started or is going to start soon in terms of production. So the only thing that's greenlit, that makes sense, that has a cast, that has everything, right, January 13th, is Creature Commando season 2. And I feel like that makes sense. So my theory is that the untitled DC project isn't in fact a new project that we don't know anything about, is in fact Creature Commando season 2, and we're going to be getting that in May. Do you think it's a different project, or do you think I'm right on the money, or do you think it's something else?
I mean, I think it could be a combination of the two, because again, they're not trying to overwhelm us like Marvel has been doing over the past couple of years, but
Right.
at the same time, they do need to keep the momentum going, and they need to keep people's interests. So they do need to be really smart about what they're putting out and when they're putting it out. So I think it could be, you know, just like I said, a combination of the two, where they're giving us a sequel, or a season 2, a series 2, whatever you want to call it, and then they're going to throw in some other projects that they might not have talked about just yet.
Yeah. Now I know in the slate it says Lanterns is coming out in June. Now that's not totally confirmed.
Right.
All that the original article said is it's or a rumor or whatever, it's coming out at around the same time as Supergirl. That could mean June. That could also mean May. That could be the May thing. I mean, Lanterns could be coming out in May, but Lanterns, that's why I said spring, because it could be like May to July, it being around that time, because that's going to be like the Supergirl hype train is going to be from pretty much May to July, like pre stuff with trailers, post stuff with it being in theaters. So I think Lanterns is probably going to come out in late spring, early summer of 2026. I think it's going to be around the same time.
Yeah, I
It
would
could
agree
be
with
in
that.
June. It could
Yeah.
be in June. But I don't think, they want to detract things from, you know, from other projects, even though they're both kind of cosmic projects. Well, these dealing with cosmic things. So I think if I were to take a guess, Lanterns would probably be in, it could be the May project that's undisclosed, and that's officially when it's coming out, but they don't want to say it just yet. And I could be wrong about Creature Commandos, or it's July. I think that makes the most sense. Um, and they did mention that I think I don't know if James Gunn mentioned, I'm pretty sure it was James Gunn that mentioned this. They are going to keep all of them are going to be homogenous in terms of a weekly basis for TV. They want, I know people hate a weekly thing. They just want to binge it all. We just want to watch 8 hours of television in one fell swoop.
That's
But
how I roll.
yeah, I mean that's how a lot of us roll. So I think that's definitely I don't think we talked about that actually. But yeah, I'm pretty sure James Gunn said it's going to be a weekly basis for all shows. So I feel like that's really good. I really like that, because that means there's some sort of like structure to all the TV shows.
Well,
So
and again,
I
it
think
it
that's
gives
good.
that opportunity to space out each project as well, so that people don't feel like they have to watch everything in order to get caught up. It's okay, so
Right.
we're giving you Creature Commandos at the end of, like, let's just use this timeline, for example. So in December, we're giving you Creature Commandos. You've got 7 weeks to get through that. Then we've got the next project coming. So it does make sense that they're doing it that way. But again, for people like me
Pros and
who like to
cons.
watch it
Pros and
all in
cons,
one
as we
shot.
just said.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
which wouldn't be a problem for me. I would typically I would just wait until it all came out and then watch it. But since I'm on this show, now I have to watch it weekly. So it's slowly torturing me, but it's fine.
Yeah, but like, yeah, as you said, it gives less time between projects, and I think that's good. But everything else is pretty much, Supergirl is confirmed. That's going to be coming out June 26th. Yeah, Dan, we know you're upset. Anyway, and Clayface is confirmed, as we were just talking about that the other day, September 11th, 2026. Those are confirmed for the time being. So, I mean, obviously things change, things get delayed, Dan. But Supergirl is pretty much on the money because that's, they said it's 2 weeks, and I highly doubt that they're going to delay that with the release date, green lighting, scripts, all that stuff. So Supergirl's the most likely out of all of them. And Clayface, that's still kind of rumor mill on when that's going to start production, but I can imagine that that's probably going to stay put as well because, as James Gunn said, Mikey Mike had the script, so they gotta let's go full force into that. Oh God, I will say I love Clayface, how he looked in Creature Commandos. It looked great.
Right.
Um, I love the grotesque monster thing. How it's just kind of like this how I imagine Clayface would be. So I really liked that. But yeah, in terms of what we have for 2027, this is what so obviously the only thing that's confirmed is Batman Part 2. Although that's fucking due to change. So it's going to be
Still even
released in the
talk about
first week
it.
in October, just like how it was going to be October 3rd, then October 2nd, and it's October 1st. So um now if we go back to the slate, the other untitled project was March of 2027. Now, out of all the projects that I think has the most causeway in terms of any of these, Teen Titans was my other guess, but I feel like we've gotten nothing in regards to that. Like that was just like Anna Naguera is writing the script, and that was it.
Yeah,
That's all
I've
we
not
got.
even heard it being brought up anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, Bane X Deathstroke, Bane versus Deathstroke, Bane and Deathstroke, whatever the fuck it's going to be called, I have a strong feeling that there's more to that than we have been letting on. I feel like because people are talking about Bane, people are talking about like Dave Bautista is Bane. Um, no, it's 2027, Dan. There people are talking about Joe Manganiello, it's Deathstroke. So I feel like there's more talking in regards to that, and I feel like this
Yeah.
is the only other project that makes sense for March 2027. There was a couple other ones, I imagine some things, but all the other projects like Waller, Brave and the
Stop
Bold,
it. I'm upset
and
about it, Dan.
and Booster Gold were all like we haven't gotten there yet. So I think those will come out much later. Um and
Well, don't do a
so
close-up on the bad hair and makeup, please.
I
Okay.
don't think
It's
it's
just
let's just go back to this. We're not going with Deathstroke's
let's just calm
bulge.
down. We know you love a bulge, Dan, but let's just calm down.
But anyway, so I think that's going to come out early in the year. I don't know if it's going to be animation or live action. I can imagine it's going to be live action.
Yeah.
But in terms of an initial and then obviously Batman Part 2 that just got confirmed with 2027, just got delayed again. Now
Again,
the
don't
other
have to
two
talk about it.
projects that I think people are gonna again, this is my hunch. I think yes, Dawn of Secret Six. I think Swamp Thing because yes, James Mangold has not been talking about it because he just did a Complete Unknown, but he just finished that film, so he's kind of free right now. I don't think he's working on anything right now. So, and 2027, it would make sense that things would kind of be starting pre-production right now, and he is the writer and director, so I think he could bang out a script pretty easily, start at pre-production late this year or early next year, and then have it in time for 2027. Again, could be blowing smoke in regards to that, but that's because Swamp Thing, that's the only other major project where we have a writer and director, it being the same guy helps. So I feel like that makes sense for like the earliest that are not confirmed right now because 2026 they're already starting to get the ball rolling, and Swamp Thing wasn't one of those projects. And I think his Star Wars projects are like on the shelf because he was going to do Dawn of the Jedi, but that fell through. I think that's on the shelf. So I think it would make sense that his next project would be Swamp Thing. And then considering all of the other major TV shows, live action TV shows that were announced in the initial announcement, yeah, like that's pretty much the case.
Yep.
Were Booster Gold, Waller, and Paradise Lost. Now, Paradise Lost is we haven't gotten a lot of stuff about that, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that I'm thinking of. Who do we have in Creature Commandos right now as like the alleged main villain? Cersei. Cersei and Themyscira are heavy proponents in Creature Commandos. That leads me to believe that after Lanterns, we're going to be getting Paradise Lost season 1. Or if it's a miniseries, just the miniseries of it. I don't think that's going to be the case. But so that's what makes me believe that Paradise Lost is the next thing. Yes, we did have some like, oh, Kumail Nanjiani is Booster Gold. Waller was going to be the first TV show, but that had to be pushed back because of the strikes and stuff. So, but then we had the announcement of like Waller, Brave and the Bold, and Booster Gold are not where James Gunn wants them to be in terms of script.
Oh,
No.
hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Oh, please God, no. Maybe if it's the skirt, maybe not the swimsuit trunks. Let's not go there. But so that makes me believe that because we're getting a lot of Wonder Woman-esque like media in terms of Creature Commandos. Maybe that's me grasping at straws. Probably. I mean, this entire half of this timeline is me grasping at straws, but that's what people come here for my dumbass takes, and then they could say you were wrong and point and laugh at me when I am wrong. But that makes me believe that Paradise Lost is probably next. Do you think that's maybe an okay hunch or no?
Yeah, I mean, the way you're explaining it makes perfect sense, and you're right. Themyscira is a big part of Creature Commandos, and I also feel like it's not something that's really been explored very much.
Right.
So it would be really nice to have a whole series or possible film, based around that with a little more context from that. But we'll see. It's again, you're talking about 2027 and it's a long ways away. It's like only a
It is a
couple
long
years
ways
ahead,
away.
but at the same time, like just so many things can change in the meantime.
Many things
So
can change, of course.
yeah,
I mean, that's what, as James Gunn said, Waller was going to be where essentially Peacemaker is.
right.
And, that didn't happen because, strikes and, things change and all that stuff. So obviously things change. I'm just saying this is just my own, this is, again, man of logic trying to figure this out. I think that's
Right.
going to be the case. So that's it for 2027. Next we have 2028, and now we're kind of bringing in really going crazy here. Now the only confirmed one we've gotten is June 30th, 2028 for Dynamic Duo.
And even that's
Um
wild to me. Like, how can you possibly like?
to be fair,
I
I'm
just
I'm
feel like
guessing they have a script. Here's the thing, it's animated. That's why it's taking so long. So, and
okay,
it's like
that's
combining
fair.
like
Okay,
different like animation styles. Like it's got puppetry, it's got CGI animation, it's got stop motion. So it's combining all these things into one huge thing. And apparently they have a script. It's by the guy who did Brave New World. So Jesus Christ. It's not the Lantern Show. We're talking about Dynamic Duo. But yeah, so that's why it would take so long. And that's why Across the Spider-Verse Part 2 is fucking taking so goddamn long. Have your VFX artists go on bathroom breaks, guys. Jesus Christ, it's not that hard. But the first one we have, I don't know what it's going to be called. I've seen Batman, The Brave and the Bold. I've seen Brave and the Bold. I've seen The Brave and the Bold. I don't know. We're just including everything. Batman, The Brave and the Bold. Yes, that's the name of the TV show, but like that's what we're calling it. So easily recognizable. Now, James Gunn said it wasn't delayed, but here's the thing. It was never greenlit in the first place. It was just announced. So I'm gonna take a wild guess that it's like, again, we were talking about the other day. We were talking about the semantics of it all. So I'm saying it like James. Well, it's technically not delayed, but that leaves us time for Andy Muschietti to fuck off, do his sci-fi movie, and then come back to Brave and the Bold. Um, you know, I considered going Batman either this year or next year, but the thing is, I think it gives enough time for Andy Muschietti to do it, but then it also gives them like, hey, let's do the Batman movie because we just had a Batman movie. We got Batman Momentum. Dynamic Duos coming out the same year. Let's have the years of the fucking next 6 months of Batman. So like, fuck it. Let's just go all in on Batman. So that's what I think they would do. They would just Batman, Mr. fucking DC is the house that Batman built, motherfucker. Like, you fucking always say that shit. So it's like might as well just keep going with Batman stuff. And as James Gunn said, like he was saying it with back when the Batman Part 2 was supposed to come out 2026, and somebody asked him, "Do you mind that Clayface and that are a couple weeks apart?" And he's like, "Not really. They're the different universes. So even if it's the same universe, I don't think he'll lose a gasket over it. I think that works." And then since Waller's the same thing. It gives them enough time to like work out semantics in terms of the writer's room that we're getting it where James Gunn wants it to be, but also the next
Now,
thing after Paradise Lost.
now is Waller gonna be a prequel, do you think? Like an origin story?
I don't know. It's hasn't the only image we have is from the comics where it's like Waller is in prison, which had a lot of people believe that it would be a prison show. But the thing is, the difference is like we've seen her in Creature Commando. She's not in prison, just that
Right.
Task Force X got kiboshed because of the events of Peacemaker season 1.
Right.
So I don't know what it's gonna. It could be her at Argus. It could be a prequel show, but it's Viola Davis was confirmed, and I mean she's looks good for her age. I mean they could.
I just feel like again, like it's 3 years from now, we have Peacemaker, we have Creature Commandos, we're gonna have other projects undoubtedly where her character will show up again. So it just seems like it's why is it so far away that they would be doing a project based around her character when we've already had so many. So that's why for me, I feel like it's a prequel thing, like it's an origin story thing, like how she
That
got
could
into the
work.
position that she's in now. That just seems to be the only thing that would make sense to me because I'm like, we've got all these other projects that are a continuation of her story. So where else can we go? Like we're
That's
already going
fair.
forward. So it would make more sense if we're delving into, what makes her tick and where she came from.
But to be fair, I'm going off of Dan's comment. Here's what I'm not including. Remember, I'm not including Peacemaker season 3 if that's happening.
Yeah.
Creature Commando season 3. These things would also be happening. It's just that I can't fathom that in terms I'm just going off the stuff that's announced and
Right.
greenlit
Sure.
as
That's
of
fair.
currently. Cuz
Yeah.
like if I were to take a guess, this year would probably have Creature Commandos season 2 or season 3, if we're going off of rough timelines in terms of what I have here. And then on top of the fact, Peacemaker, that took 3 years. So that could come out in 2028 or 2027 as
And again,
well.
we're talking about 3 years from now, there could be another writer's strike, there could be another pandemic, like, there
Yeah.
there could be plenty
The
of other
world could
things that
end.
that
Who
hold
knows?
up. Yeah.
And we just have our recorded bullshit of meandering stuff that doesn't really matter, but here we are.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's just my imagining. It could be a prequel thing, it could be not. But I think whatever they decide to do, I feel like it gives them enough time to figure things out. Um, yes, I'm aware. Um, but I mean, if to be fair, Creature Commandos is a hit,
Yeah.
that certainly helps. Um, so, but said he had a 5-year plan, so that's why I went for 5 years. They'll be
That's fair.
yeah. And then finally, Blue Beetle. This was announced after the initial announcement, and that makes me believe that it'll happen sooner rather than later,
Now,
especially with
so
how much he
is this gonna
believes
be
in
a
it.
Blue Beetle 2, or is this gonna be a TV series?
I think both. I think it'll follow the
Okay.
events of the first film in this continuity, but
Okay.
it'll be after the events of the film. So I think it's going to be an animated series. They can get away with a lot more. Um, I could definitely just see them doing like an anime style, like Creature Commandos, um, or whatever they decide to do. I think it'll be really interesting because Joe Lamar Dueña was born to play this role. But yeah, that's it for 2028. But I do think we're going to be getting the animated series first, and then the final 3 projects that are announced, we've pretty much heard nothing on, and they had to be, delayed for certain reasons. We've gotten everything. So for 2029, I have The Authority, Teen Titans, and Booster Gold. So here is we've heard nothing about The Authority, we've heard nothing about Teen Titans, and we've heard absolutely nothing about Booster Gold. So the only thing was like it was a rumor that Kumail Nanjiani was gonna be Booster Gold, and Jolo maybe confirmed it, but sort of like a trust me, bro kind of way. So that's why I put
Right.
them all at the end of the timeline because the Authority and Booster Gold were announced in the initial announcement, and we've heard nothing. We had the only thing is like rumors that James Gunn is maybe writing the Authority script, and Anna Neguera's maybe writing a Teen Titans script, and that Kumail Nanjiani's maybe Booster Gold, as well as there was the later announcement of like Booster Gold is not where we want it to be right now. James Gunn did mention that, so that gives the fullest amount of time for them to work on this stuff. But also, like, we've got nothing, so that's why I put them at the very end of this like rough timeline, so to speak. So I think the Authority is definitely the thing is about the Authority. It would have made sense for that to be right after Superman, but as James Gunn said, things change. Who knows? Um, and Teen Titans, it was. I am aware it is mentioned after the fact, just like I was mentioning about Blue Beetle. But Blue Beetle was greenlit after, well, greenlit announced. Sorry, announced after Teen Titans, so that gives a smaller timeline that makes more sense. And then, but Teen Titans, the only thing we've gotten is like a rumor of like, oh yeah, it'll be like the TV show, and that's it. Booster Gold, maybe we'll have Kumail Nanjiani. So that's why I put them at the end. There's little cause for this. I don't have a ton of, you know, like reasoning for that. Like I had reasoning for, Creature Commando season 2 and Bane X Deathstroke and, Paradise Lost. I don't really have a ton of
I mean,
reasoning
to
behind these. Just
me,
we've got nothing. So at the end you go.
some of these movies probably end up getting moved around potentially to be earlier. I mean, Booster Gold is a TV series. I'd imagine that if it's coming after the Blue Beetle animated TV series, then maybe that means that Blue Beetle does show up in Booster Gold.
Exactly.
And Booster Gold is meant to be live action, last I
Yes.
checked. Although, like, if it is gonna be like somebody like a Kumail Nanjiani playing Booster Gold, it's hard to kind of see. I mean, maybe he'll have amazing chemistry with Jolo Maridueña's Blue Beetle, and certainly it's not like Jolo is a child, like a little kid. He's practically an adult, and he'll be even older by the time, if Booster Gold does take that long. But the fact that they're already working on the scripts, I mean,
Well,
maybe it comes out sooner. I mean, I think any of these projects, The Authority, like you said, would make a lot more sense if they released it closer to Superman. But James Gunn has said, look, the reason why Clayface has been greenlit now, and the reason why Supergirl, which he said himself, Supergirl was never gonna be, wasn't supposed to originally be the next movie after Superman. It just
exactly.
they loved the script, and Anna Neguera did a fantastic job with it, which is why apparently they've brought her on for writing Teen Titans, which isn't officially confirmed by James Gunn, but that is the reporting that we got last spring, and it came from all the big outlets, so like all the trades. So I would trust the reporting. I just don't know when we're gonna actually get the movie, or if the script is actually gonna get greenlit. It depends on, I guess, how good the script is. But for Booster Gold, we don't yet know who is going to be playing the character. We don't know if they have a writer's room. They probably do, considering that James Gunn is saying that the scripts aren't quite ready yet, so somebody's working on it or on them. Um,
Hmm.
the Authority is the only one where there's literally almost no talent attached to it outside of the engineer, with Maria Gabriela De Fria playing the engineer in the new Superman movie. It's possible that she will, make it across into the Authority unless her character, bites the dust in the Superman movie, which is unlikely considering that she's a significant part of
She's
the
more
team in the
significant
comics.
for the
The
Authority than for
Authority,
Superman.
Superman. So it would make sense that she moves across, and this is like the people's connection to, like, oh, we saw her there, therefore, it makes sense, and that would be a good part of the marketing, I'm sure. But The Authority is also a really big movie. A lot of characters, a lot of
Hmm.
story to cover, and it's so different from what a lot of us are used to. Now, granted, you can look at it and say, "Oh, isn't it like The Boys?" But it's not really quite The
No, it's
Boys.
not.
It's not a parody. It's not meant to be making fun of it or politicize it too much. There's a lot of actually great representation with the characters in there. It's sort of like, I think it's closer to maybe Watchmen than The Boys in some ways, but even that is not a fair comparison. But that's the whole reason why it's even on the slate. It's such a
Hmm.
unique project. Nobody would have guessed that when James Gunn would announce the DCU slate that The Authority would be on there as a project. But it is one of those movies where we were like, this could be a great sci-fi epic, almost like the prelude to the Justice League in this DCU, right? Because we're talking about chapter 1, part 1 of the Gods and Monsters, right? So all of this stuff still technically is part of like the first half of Gods and Monsters, that whole chapter 1 that they announced. So I'd imagine The Authority probably is a big inflection point movie that
Hmm.
will eventually then lead up to the Justice League film, which is probably what's going to wrap up or finish up chapter 1 of Gods and Monsters, and then we go on to chapter 2, which could be whatever else it's called. I just think that a couple of these things could come out a bit sooner, especially if, for example, look, Ana Negreira pitched the idea for that Supergirl movie, and they loved it so much they were like, let's get this into production. They hired Craig Gillespie, is going to start filming in a couple of weeks. I'd imagine that if she delivers, on the same level for Teen Titans, that might end up getting moved a little bit further forward. So I wouldn't mind seeing that myself. But I mean, this is a great list, right? Like between all the different years, you go back all the way to the Here and the Now with Superman. You can see each of these years there's at least one marquee project that sort of anchors the whole slate. You got
Exactly.
Superman this year. Next year you have Supergirl, and then and in many ways Lanterns is almost as big of a project, except it's a TV show. So naturally, more people will probably end up being able to see Supergirl when it comes out, especially because HBO still, like Max, still isn't available everywhere in the world. So um, that does worry me a little bit, but I'm sure people, if they're motivated, they'll find it. So
Yeah.
when you go on to 2027, Bane and Deathstroke anchors the whole slate there, because of course you got three projects: Swamp Thing, Paradise Lost, Bane and Deathstroke. And then you go on to 2028. Then you have Batman, Brave and the Bold, dynamic duo. We already have a release date for that. Waller and Blue Beetle. We still don't know where Matt Reeves' Batman Part 2 fits into all of this, but then in circa 2029, you've got The Authority, Teen Titans, and Booster Gold. I would imagine The Authority is the peak of that year. But in all seriousness, though, the Batman Part 2 would be the biggest project of 2027 if it manages to come out in 2027. I'd imagine that if that
Exactly.
gets pushed, then that date probably gets taken over by one of The Authority or Teen Titans. Like if that's probably what gets moved up. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, this is great. We all, of course, started out with that other graphic, this big slate that Heroes Assemble put together, which is a great visual representation of all this. But then, John, you went in and did a bit of your own research, and I think in terms of filling out that May 2026 and then that March 2027, those empty slots, it does make sense that if you were to do it 2026, you could make that one of these projects.
Hmm.
Um, which so far May 2026, it's difficult to see if maybe that is one of those things like Teen Titans, like you mentioned, or maybe the Authority. Probably not the Authority. Maybe it's Teen Titans, or if the Bane and Deathstroke movie, like you said, is farther along, maybe it's that one. It would be
It's
interesting.
just they would have to start
Yeah,
filming
yeah,
soon.
and then
Was
Swamp
my
Thing, we
and
really
Creature
don't know much
Commandos is the
about.
only thing
Yeah.
that's been greenlit that has a cast that
Hmm.
probably has had people working on it for a
But the thing
while.
is,
Already established.
Creature Commandos, these placeholders are theatrical releases, so I don't
I
think it
don't
would be
think
Creature
so. It says
Commandos.
DC Project. It doesn't say
No, no, no.
DC Film.
These are, but that information is pulled from the theatrical release schedule, so that's a placeholder on the theatrical release schedule.
All right, that's
So
fair.
there's actually, they don't list out the specific date. There's a specific weekend like a specific date in March 2027 that DC has earmarked, and May 2026. So
And
I'd
again, these,
imagine,
by the way, I also
yeah,
did want to mention, sorry to cut you off. I don't know if you were going to say this,
yeah,
but these placeholders could just be placeholders just in
they don't
case.
have to be filled in.
They don't have to be actual
It
film.
happens
So,
sometimes. Most of the time, there's a plan there, but like they
because,
won't put that marker down unless they have something in the works.
yeah,
But
because it could
yeah,
also be like they just want to, maybe it's an open weekend and they have something
yeah.
on in mind that could work for that weekend. But then obviously, if it doesn't work, then they could
Yeah,
just find another date.
exactly. I
Right.
mean, a lot of the times when they schedule movies out like that, or like these slots, it's just telling the other studios that we're potentially releasing a movie here, just plan accordingly. And Disney does this, Warner Brothers, all the big studios do this. I mean, Liz, do you feel like in a situation like this where you have these two placeholders that these would be good opportunities for DC to kind of fill them in? Because when you look at the number of movies in 2026, they've already got their two. So adding a third movie, do you feel like that's too many? Because especially when you're looking at May, June, and September, it's not like you're doing January, July, and December. These will be pretty tightly squeezed together. And Lanterns is
Yeah.
also meant to come out right after Supergirl. Do you think there's enough space
Yeah.
there for there to be three
Well,
movies?
again, like you said, these are placeholders, but you also have to look at what the other, just like you said, you have to look at what the other studios are
Right.
doing. So in that regard, I think it does make sense because they're looking as well to future projects for on behalf of the other studios. They're looking at seeing what Marvel's doing. They're looking and seeing, what other big studios are putting together. So it makes sense to me. I mean, yeah, like I said, I'm bummed out that we have to wait until July for Superman, but then we go right back into Peacemaker season 2. We get some other stuff going on here. So it's, we're still going to have plenty of things to talk about, plenty of things to watch and keep us occupied.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm glad they're not overwhelming us as I've said. I'm glad they're not overwhelming us like Marvel has been doing. So in that regard, I'm totally fine with what we're looking at right now.
I mean, what I will say, Avengers Doomsday comes out May 1st, 2026. So to me, that's such a big train just coming down the tracks that if they were in their right mind, I feel like that movie is probably going to end up being, like that date is not going to end up getting filled out. And if it is, it's going to be a smaller movie. They're not going to put one of their like really big like movies. Like if it's not going to be Teen Titans, it's probably more likely to be an animated project. Or if it is, I mean that could be good counter programming. But if it is a big movie, like they'll need to do it like it's the last weekend of May, because you do not want to get in the way of the freight train that is going to be Avengers Doomsday in the
Or it
month
could
of
be a
May.
TV show. You never
Yeah,
know. I mean, it would
it
make
could
more
be.
sense if it was a TV show, in my
Well, but
opinion.
the
But
thing is, like, but I was mentioning to John earlier, when these dates were pulled from a theatrical release schedule, so most likely these are meant to be movies. So TV
yeah,
shows, you could really just pick out a date for whenever you want because it's your own streaming service. It's not gonna be like you're competing with other movies, other studios. It's just going to Max or HBO. So, but then March 2027, that there is a good amount of spacing between whatever DC movie that is, and then I think it's May 7th, 2027 is when Avengers Secret Wars comes out. So that's plenty of runway for whichever movie comes out in March that year to make plenty of money. I would venture a guess that if Matt Reeves does get off his ass and finish the script and they do start filming, there's a potential that they could announce that the Batman Part 2 releases in March of 2027 instead of, October 2027. Because remind me, if I am correct in remembering, the Batman, the OG The Batman came out in March 4th, 2022. So it would make sense that if they were to move it from October, that March would be the logical date to move it forward, saying that, oh, we finished the work on it, it's great. Like I would love nothing more than to be surprised, in December of 2026 and be like the Batman's coming in 3 months versus waiting another 10 months. I would love
yeah,
that. I would
yeah.
honestly love that. And then that
Yeah,
would
but
free up October for something else.
that's a dream. You got to wake up, my guy.
I, I'm trying to be
An
hopeful. Can you
educated
imagine
wish.
though? I'm just
Educated
saying
wish.
though, wouldn't it make all the sense in the world if Bane and that
It would.
like if Swamp Thing, like just imagine Swamp Thing would fit perfectly in October. It is the exact kind of character that you want to see come out in the in the Halloween season, right? Like it fits
Hmm.
the description. You put that in October, and then you move Batman forward to March. it would make all the sense in the world. And then in the middle of the year, you got, Dynamic Duo coming out. Or actually, no, that's 2028. Maybe what you do is in the summer months, you put Bane and Deathstroke out. That would be a perfect movie for the summer, especially if you cast The Rock as Bane and Jason Statham as Deathstroke, and then it's just like a Hobbs and Shaw spinoff. So that could work.
No, Vin Diesel as Deathstroke.
Oh my God.
No, we don't actually want them to kill each other.
We are Deathstroke.
But yeah, I mean, it's just exciting though. When you put it all together, the fact that they have so many of these in development, and you look at all of these projects that have already been, everything on 2024 to 25 is either greenlit and already in production, or it's pretty much gonna happen. And then when you get into 2026, everything on that list is greenlit. Most of them have dates attached. Season 2 of Creature Commandos will get a date attached to it sooner than later. 2026 really looks bright for DC as well. And 2027 has a little more of a iffy nature to it because Bane and Deathstroke still isn't confirmed by James Gunn. Swamp Thing we know is happening, but we don't really know what is going on with it. The Batman Part 2, given that it's been delayed twice, it could be delayed again. Paradise Lost, we have really no idea. So I think it's once you hit 2027, things become a bit more nebulous. And then 2028, we're just guessing right now because the only thing we really know is Dynamic Duo. It's coming out that year. Everything else is the Brave and the Bold could come out before then. Blue Beetle and Waller could come out before then. We know all of those are already in development. They're already working on scripts for Waller. So then when you get to 2029, yeah, the Authority, Teen Titans, Booster Gold. The Teen Titans script, actually, believe it or not, out of all of those three, I have the most faith in Teen Titans because
Anna Naguera's it's Teen fucking Titans.
No, but also it's like Anna Naguera's done a good job and she's already, produced a fantastic script for.
Well, I mean, we don't know. It could suck for all we know.
I know, but I'm just like, you're gonna trust James Gunn, right? Like James Gunn, trust in Anna to clearly deliver because she did that for Supergirl. I'd imagine they trusted her with Teen Titans for that, reason, and probably because they're like, hey, you did great with this, and it looks like you have a great vision for the Teen Titans characters. Take a crack at it, and we'll take a look at it and see if you want to do it. But then again, James Gunn hasn't officially greenlit it. So for all we know, it could be like, oh, she just, it was a one-hit wonder situation, and she did really well with Supergirl, but really, missed the mark with Teen Titans, and James Gunn just scraps it entirely. Because you have talked about how Teen Titans, would you do the Damian Wayne version? Would you have a young Dick Grayson? How does all of that work? Then you got Dynamic Duo coming out. Is that DCU or not? Still a little bit of a question mark next to that. So we'll have to see. But hey, this is the DCU timeline. As of today, a lot of question marks, but there's a lot more dates attached to a lot more projects than there were a year ago, which is great. And of course, the summer and the year of Superman continues. So thank you, John, for putting that together. John's best research. In John's best research, we trust. With an asterisk.
But I mean, like, people wanted a timeline. They're like, yeah, what's the timeline after Supergirl? I'm like, well, that's my best guess.
That's the best
with the information we got.
We without actually, doing a bit of inception in James Gunn's mind, that's the best we can do. So with that said, let us know in the comments what you think. Of course, if you haven't already, hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button, because if you are new, then we are here 5 days a week. So please come and join us. Hit the notification bell so you know when we go live or have a new video going up. And if you were in the live chat, then thanks for joining us. And we'd love to hear from you. Or if you were, joining us in the comment section, let us know your pick. What did John get wrong? Do you have a timeline for yourself?
Yeah, like 10 years from now, what did I get wrong, guys?
We will collect the receipts and then we will bring them to John, and I'm sure John is keeping receipts for you guys as well. So have a good weekend ahead. We'll see you on the other side, and it's been another great week. Thank you, Liz and John, for joining us. We'll see you in another episode of DCU.